Welcome to Autism SA's presentation on evidence-informed practice. My name is Lexi Dryden and I'm a consultant at Autism SA and have been there for over 18 years across the specialised support services in the school inclusion program and the training, consultancy and research team. I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today and pay my respects to the elders past and present. I extend my respect to the Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people who are present today. In this session, we will be providing you with a brief overview of evidence-based practices, why to use these, what kind of guidelines there are out there to support you in their use, and the different types of evidence-based programs that are around to support autism. This will give you some awareness of what they are and where to find more information to ensure you are utilising best practice in your day-to-day support and interactions with neurodiverse individuals. Evidence-based practice is an evidence-informed approach drawing on information from research and academic studies, bringing it together with expertise and wisdom from practice and the views and experience of people accessing services. It incorporates looking at the best available research evidence, looking at clients' characteristics, the state in which they live, the needs, their values and their individual preferences, and the resources, including practitioner expertise. All of these together form evidence-based practices to try to improve the lives and best outcomes for individuals who are neurodiverse. With the increase in the diagnosis of autism spectrum disorders and the advent of NDIS and increased awareness, there is now great demand for knowledge about intervention practices that work, with recognition that these may need to be lifelong. Knowing which practices are effective and supported by research is critical to ensure that best practice methods are used, as some practices may actually be ineffective, short-term, or cause harm, for example, chelation. Many parents and professionals are involved with online forums that may discuss anecdotal evidence of strategies and interventions that are being utilised and may not be best practice or in the best interest of autistic individuals. It is therefore important to use the right evidence-based practice in the right way to maximise clinical benefit and minimise harm. As everyone's experience of autism is unique, there is no one-size-fits-all approach. Knowing a person's strengths and needs will assist in matching the right supports and services to suit an individual's needs. Often we need to focus on the characteristics of autism and what the impacts of this may be for each individual, often looking at a deficit model. It is critical to try to flip this to see the strengths and gifts that autism can bring and to ensure that each strategy or intervention is individualised for the person and the context in which they participate. When considering evidence-based practices to use to support neurodiverse individuals, it is important to consider the following areas. Some evidence-based practices will only address one or two key areas of the core characteristics of autism, but will not address all areas. And there are some practices where it is easy to conduct a randomised controlled trial, which is a very high standard of studies. For example, behavioural impacts versus sensory accommodations due to efficacy and what the studies are trying to show. Some evidence-based practices are effective only for a particular age group. For example, the Early Start Denver model is used for those usually between the ages of 12 and 48 months. Some require a high level of intensity and frequency of implementation in the delivery of the practice. For example, ABA is recommended to be implemented for over 20 hours per week. There are many different means and standards by which to measure evidence-based practices as well. In supporting neurodiverse individuals, good practice planning principles need to be person-centred and family-focused, involving the voice of the autistic individual and their family with their best interests at heart. They need to be holistic, look at all the contexts in which someone participates and those around them. Collaborative and team-based, a team around the person approach, involving all professionals where possible. Strength-focused, building upon what a person can do and their interests. Ecological considerations, being considerate of everything around the person in every context in which they participate. and need to change over time as they grow and learn new skills. When using any evidence-based practice, it is critical to ask yourself and others, am I doing the right thing in the right way, with the right person, at the right time, in the right place for the right results? And am I the right person to be doing it? And is it at the right cost? This session is not to go through each individual evidence-based practice in detail, but to let you know where and how to look at research and evidence to support you in the decision-making process. There are many different guidelines available, and we will look at some of these, as well as providing you with a Word document with links to these after this session. Considerations around the findings of these is important to ensure the right kind of support is provided in the settings your student is participating, their level of ability and need, that of their family, your teaching style, and assessing other classroom and people's needs. It can also be helpful to use these in conjunction with a suitably qualified professional. Evidence-based practices for children, youth, and young adults with autism. This report was supported by several funding streams, including the Institute of Education Sciences and US Department of Education. This guide describes a set of practices that have clear evidence of positive effects with autistic children and youth. It is a systematic review of evidence that explains differences between focused intervention practices and comprehensive treatment models, including the age of children and youth for whom the practices are intended and the outcomes. It defines each evidence-based practice, provides visually clear and explicit information around the outcome areas such as communication, social, school readiness, and adaptive and self-help, and the age range to which each is applicable. To provide practical procedures in order to support people in the implementation of these practices, the research team developed the Affirm online learning modules. The autism-focused intervention resources and modules, and this is an extension of the National Professional Development Centre on ASD. This matrix of evidence-based practices from that particular guideline will go through all of the evidence-based practices and who they are suitable for. So at a glance, you can have a look at that and determine if the intervention you are potentially looking at for an individual with autism will be potentially of benefit, whether the empirical studies can actually inform you that there are relevant outcomes that have been assessed clinically to base that decision upon. The report, Interventions for Children on the Autism Spectrum, a synthesis of research evidence, was commissioned by the National Disability Insurance Agency and completed by the Cooperative Research Centre for Living with Autism, or the Autism CRC, through the work of a research team with a diverse range of professional backgrounds, and provides families and clinicians the best opportunity to make informed decisions when choosing interventions. It includes a broad range of interventions for children on the autism spectrum, including the principles underpinning all of the interventions and the rationale behind each category of intervention. The report also includes a comprehensive review of the scientific evidence for the effects of interventions for the children on the spectrum, both therapeutic and otherwise. The report has been published by Autism CRC to assist public knowledge and discussion to improve the outcomes for people on the autism spectrum through end-user-driven research. Autism CRC Australia is the world's first national cooperative research centre focused on autism. According to the executive summary, the current report had two broad aims: to provide an overview of non-pharmacological interventions that have been developed for children on the autism spectrum, and the training pathways in Australia for clinical practitioners who provide these interventions, and to review the scientific evidence for the therapeutic and other effects of interventions for children on the autism spectrum. Autism spectrum disorder, evidence-based, evidence-informed good practice for supports provided to preschool children, their families and carers, was prepared for the National Disability Insurance Agency to assist with making decisions about the delivery of services to preschool children with autism and their families and other carers. It looks at what evidence-based and evidence-informed good practices are, what characteristics or other factors would assist in looking at early childhood interventions, and what other factors, including outcomes, would indicate a need for modification For example, an increase or decrease of the frequency or intensity of the intervention and the impact it has on outcomes. It looks closely at delivering a family-centred approach using individualised planning, incorporating family preferences and each child's strengths and difficulties and their age and stage of development. It takes into account that at the time the child is diagnosed, generally speaking, parents know the least they will ever know about autism at this point and need extensive support to focus on their child's particular strengths and difficulties. And that they also need support around what are available services, their advantages and disadvantages, and whether they will be the right fit for them and their child. Terminology varies across countries, Australia, and between guidelines. So strategies and practices are generally designed to address a single skill. For example, you might use visual support or video modelling, the prompting, positive reinforcement, and time delay, where you're allowing that little bit of a gap before you prompt or give a reinforcement. Programs, comprehensive approaches, comprehensive treatment approaches and interventions, they're generally consisting of a range of practices in conjunction with the implementation of those practices. For example, the TEACH approach, which is treatment and education of autistic and related communication handicapped children, applied behaviour analysis or ABA, the Early Start Denver model and the Hanen More Than Words program. Therapy, therapeutical intervention and treatments are generally practices and interventions that are provided by a qualified health professional, such as occupational therapists, psychologists, music and art therapists, social workers, and other allied health professionals. Early intervention in general refers to interventions, therapy and strategies that are provided for children under the age of 7 years. Evidence-based practices around communication in particular incorporate augmentative and alternative communication devices such as Proloquo to Go, Tap to Go, and other voice output devices. Whilst AACs can support expressive communication, communication is a two-way street, and so supporting receptive language as well as expressive language is important. Visual supports can assist with that by providing visual information that becomes a promise. So an individual knows what to do and what order in which to do it, where their information goes when it's finished or where they go when they're finished and what are they doing next. So providing that clear visual structure can support them to be calm because they can see exactly what is expected and when it's going to occur. So things such as visual schedules, timetables, routines, task breakdowns, task analysis, procedural text, etc., all fit into that visual supports area and more. Programs such as the Incredible 5-Point Scale, the Way to A, also can fit within these. The Picture Exchange Communication System, or PECS, is another great one to support the development of functional communication skills and expressive communication. It incorporates different phases to support development of expressive communication, such as an individual typically would verbally. It is not designed to replace developing verbal communication, but to augment it. It also supports the development of social communication once those skills are learnt and developed, and helps them to integrate them into real-world situations. There are many kinds of prompting, from verbal prompts to gestural prompts and hand-over-hand type prompting. It is important to ensure that the right kind of prompting is used at the right level and faded with time, or individuals can run the risk of becoming prompt dependent, especially where it is a verbal prompt. They may become reliant on a person needing to be present to give them that next step in the process, which is why often visual supports can work more effectively. There is a hierarchy for teaching prompting, and it should be followed and faded with time so that the person becomes more independent in following the communication schedule, device or routine. Time delay is where you are delaying that time in giving that prompt so that you are hoping that that individual is able to undertake that process more independently and is faded again with time. Technology-aided instruction and intervention is an ever-increasing area of support for people with autism. This area can support both expressive and receptive language needs, and can incorporate using all mobile devices such as phones, iPads, tablets, and computers. Some things can include the emergency chat app, which is kind of like texting back and forth but on one screen, and can really support an individual when they are in a heightened state and find verbal communication challenging. They can write it down. Dictation technology such as Dragon, screencasting apps such as Explain Everything, which are great for when a student struggles with part of a strategy or context to help them to learn it more. Synchronised audio note-taking such as Digital Pens, Notability, Audio Note Taker and Glean. Functional communication training would generally be something done in conjunction with an allied health professional such as a speech pathologist, teaching social pragmatics and understanding of social contexts and situations. Some examples of evidence-based practices to support social interaction include the Developmental Individual Difference Relationship-Based Model of Human Development, or DIR floor time, focusing on connection and engagement with what a child naturally enjoys doing and building upon this, and was founded by Stanley Greenspan. Video modelling uses video technology to record and show a demonstration of the targeted behaviour or skill, generally editing out the bits in which they are unsuccessful to show them undertaking an expected skill. This can be used for social skill development or a sequence such as washing hands or waiting. Social narratives are written to support a learner in understanding the context of a potentially challenging situation in order for them to be able to develop understanding and awareness of this situation. They also describe expected responses and the thoughts and feelings of others to support the development of social understanding and theory of mind. Modelling involves the demonstration of a desired target behaviour to support observational learning. Visual supports for social interaction can include the use of evidence-informed practices such as the Incredible 5-point scale, social behaviour mapping, comic strip conversations, cognitive picture rehearsal, and visual cue cards, to name but a few. Social skills training is where a group or an individual participates in learning how to interact with each other and can include role play, practice and feedback to support the acquisition of positive social skills. Examples of this might be the I'm Social program at Autism SA, What's the Buzz and Lego Therapy. Naturalistic interventions in teaching include environmental arrangement and interaction techniques used during everyday routines and across contexts to encourage specific target behaviours based on the learner's interest, strengths and level of skill. Most evidence-based practices are used in conjunction with each other in an eclectic approach to complement each other and more effectively build skills. There are many different evidence-based practices to support development of more expected behaviours, focusing on positive behaviour support. These include functional behaviour assessments, which are systematic ways of determining the underlying function or purpose of a behaviour so that an effective intervention plan can be developed. They objectively describe an interfering or problem behaviour, identifying antecedent and consequent events, and development of a hypothesis as to the function of the behaviour. This is followed by creation and implementation of a positive behaviour support plan. Reinforcement is the application of consequences after a skill or behaviour occurs that increases the likelihood of that skill or behaviour occurring, and includes positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, which is different than punishment, and token economies. This is a foundational evidence-based practice in that it is almost always used with other evidence-based practices across the board. The Early Start Denver model is a comprehensive play-based therapy that helps autistic children develop social communication skills, play skills, relationships and language through everyday activities. It focuses on helping children learn skills like showing interest, communicating with and responding to, and playing with others. Sensory issues tend to impact significantly on those with autism, so working with an occupational therapist or other autism professionals to support sensory integration and interoceptive needs are key. Ayres sensory integration was developed by A. Jean Ayres, an OT psychologist and neuroscientist, to help integrate the 8 senses to improve sensory perceptual abilities, self-regulation, motor skills and praxis. Environmental adjustment focus or enrichment typically involves access to larger, more stimulating environments with increased opportunities for socialisation and voluntary physical activity. These have been lauded for reducing reactivity to stress, anxiety, and to increase cognitive functioning, learning, and memory. It can include introducing varied textures, sensory stimulation, and exercise on a regular basis for autistic individuals. There are many evidence-informed apps that can be used to support the development of skills, such as Galia, focusing on joint attention and imitations and based on the Early Start Denver model; Gaze, an app to detect possible signs of autism in toddlers by detecting their eye gaze when watching a video; Toby, it's an early intervention iPad app for young children with autism. The app adapts to your child's unique learning and developmental needs as they progress through the tasks by setting goals and adjusting difficulty levels. Its inbuilt reward system allows your child to collect tokens as they complete tasks and spend these on fun activities, as well as 3 levels of prompts to encourage your child to be an independent learner. Equine assisted therapy can incorporate horses to engage people in activities such as grooming, feeding, and leading a horse to help them develop emotional regulation, self-confidence and responsibility, as well as using a potential interest to engage them in working with day-to-day tasks to do with those horses. Hippotherapy uses the characteristic movements of a horse to provide carefully graded motor and sensory input. A foundation is established to improve neurological function and sensory processing, which can be generalised to a wide range of daily activities. This is controlled by a handler while the participant performs various exercises and movements to help them develop core strength, vestibular and proprioceptive input, among other things. Transporter's video and series was developed in 2006 to help children with autism, roughly between the ages of 2 and 8 years, to recognise and understand emotions. It uses a concept similar to Thomas the Tank Engine, but uses real people's faces grafted onto animated vehicles and uses interactive quizzes, videos and booklets to support emotional recognition. Lego therapy uses an individual's strengths and interest around Lego to develop social connections and to support the development of turn-taking, sharing, listening, conversations, shared attention, problem solving and teamwork. It uses clear structure, routine and visuals where each child is assigned a role such as the engineer, supplier, builder and at times formal director to engage individuals and develop these skills. As you have seen, many evidence-based practices can be used to support across many developmental areas. It is important to note that just as every autistic person is a unique individual, so must every support plan and intervention program be individualised in order to meet their needs. Not every evidence-based practice will work for everyone every time, and a flexible, eclectic approach may need to be considered. However, by utilising evidence-based practices and knowing that there is research and data to prove efficacy, we minimise risk and potential harm to the people for whom we are providing care, support and education. When working with families, it is important that we listen to the individual and their family about evidence-based practices that work best for them and to include the voice of the individual. Generalising these practices and subsequent skill development across contexts, including the school community, in the yard, the classroom and beyond, will be important in supporting long-term positive change. It is also important to support those around the autistic individual in understanding their needs and being supportive and empathetic towards neurodiversity. Promoting peer awareness, utilising programs such as Autism SA's Power of Peers, can promote inclusivity and understanding. If there are any concerns about a practice that is being used or the effectiveness of it, it would be of benefit to ask or research resources around the practice and to determine whether it is in fact an evidence-based practice. Other autism-specific evidence-based practice resources are included as a separate Word document for your personal research and to peruse at your leisure. Remember, helping one person might not change the whole world, but it could change the world for that one person. Thank you for your time and participation in this session, and good luck with your future endeavours. Should you require any further support around evidence-based practices or the implementation of them in your educational setting, please feel free to get in touch with Autism SA on 8379 6976.